Let's get some reaction from that briefing that we were just listening to, and we're joined by energy expert Fanele Mondi. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Fanele. Eskom being rather candid with the viewers today, saying that the situation is unfortunately quite severe at the moment, and they cannot say when they will be lifting stage 6 load shedding at the moment, just because of the severe lack of generation capacity and basically zero diesel at the moment that they're waiting for. What were your initial takeaways from what we heard from Andre and his executive team?
Good morning, Rafa. Maybe let me just explain. I speak as the CEO of Energy Intensive Users Group, not as an expert. Regarding the key issues which are coming up, one is that it is quite clear that we have a system which is really failing us. And the question is, what is it then we do about that? The view we hold is that this crisis is now far beyond Eskom. It requires an intervention of all stakeholders. And with that regard, we concur with the position which Andre was making around the need for demand-side management interventions. We believe those are quick wins where we just use the currently available energy more efficiently. And that goes for our members in terms of industrial members and mining companies, which EIUG represents, as well as the ordinary South Africans in terms of their own residential use and any other commercial use. The second aspect which came up, I think, particularly from Jan, is the issue of the additional capacity. There are two key components associated with that. One is the capacity which the government, in terms of the DMRE, is supposed to provide. We have seen recently, despite the fact that we had these delays in terms of bid window 5 and the risk mitigation projects, but the government has gone out in terms of bid window 6, and as we currently speak, there is a concurrence requiring another 18,000 megawatts addition to the system. So that is quite promising. The second aspect is really about what the private sector can do. At this stage, the private sector has almost 8,000 gigawatts, which are on the pipeline in terms of their own contribution to this. So the situation is really promising in that sense. But fact of the matter is that this thing is going to take time. Our estimation is that probably for the next year to two, we will still be having this kind of problems. The last part, which probably was not much emphasized in terms of this media brief, is the issue of the operational improvement within Eskom. We have seen, obviously, over, I think it was late last week, where they issued a request for skills, etc. Those are the interventions which Eskom must try to expedite on their side, because this level of performance is certainly not what the country desires. So they need to do a lot to improve the performance of the system and improve the organization.
I mean, 2 years is a long time to wait to see some kind of solid improvement. And while it is encouraging that they'll be going to market as early as tomorrow to procure existing generation capacity from IPPs and industrial companies like the ones you represent, is encouraging. In the meantime, Mr. Andre de Ruyter indicated that the budget for diesel supplies will have to increase. I think he said even almost double, just because of the capacity that they need to be catering for in these times. Does that not concern you, especially because for the first time in a while, diesel is now more expensive than other fuels?
It is a serious concern. I think, like we've had the numbers, in 5 months, 7.7 billion rands is gone. And this is an organization which is already making losses. The worst part about it is that some of these diesel costs, they come back to the ordinary consumer, both in terms of the ordinary South African as well as the industrial and other commercial consumers in the form of the clawbacks in terms of the regulatory clearing account. So it is a huge concern because other than the fact that our security is not guaranteed in terms of energy, but now our prices are being pushed upwards as well. So it is a really concerning matter.
No, it is, and we'll get into more pricing issues in a moment, Fanele. I just want to engage you on the fact that some may be very confused about the fact that we're seeing these aggressive levels of load shedding, given that we are entering the summer period. One would assume that energy usage by households and the like is not as much as it was in winter, and so the intensity at which load shedding is being implemented here, many may question.
Yes, ordinarily that's how one would have thought when you have got enough capacity. But in our case, the winter challenges are really about capacity, which is most evident during the peak periods, when people are either waking up and heating, whether is it water or cooking, as well as in the evening in terms of space heating and other demands. So that's where Eskom was battling. So if you had noticed in winter, most of our load shedding was happening during those peaks, whereas in summer it's an energy issue where you find that the load shedding runs for the full day typically, not just on the peaks. So I think that's one of the challenges. But the reason that informs that, other than the breakdowns, is the fact that this is the season in which Eskom pushes its maintenance. Like we've seen yesterday, they were reporting something like 7,000 megawatts, which were on maintenance, which is quite a huge number. So it plays a role. But what is breaking the system right now, though, is not that plant maintenance, it's really the breakdowns.
Mm-hmm. So there was also just an acknowledgement by Eskom during the briefing, Fanele, that the coal fleet is very old and a lot of it, if not majority, is reaching its end of life. And it didn't sound like there is a solid plan for Eskom when this eventuality finally knocks on its door.
I think in terms of that eventuality, the way it will happen, for instance, if you look at IRP 2019, there is an indication of when you start taking off those megawatts. Yes, that is going to push quite a lot of demand on the system in terms of how do we replace those megawatts. For instance, I think was 2030, we're talking over 20,000 megawatts, which have got to be removed. So we will still need to come up with something which says, how then do we replace that? And especially for us, I must emphasize, as large power users, we need the stability of the grid, and that is normally provided by the base load. So in terms of how we select that mix, it is going to be quite important. However, when it comes to the performance issues, it is a concern of ours that in as much as sometimes the aging plant is used as a reason, when you look at the statistics, for instance, the top 4 non-performing units, so to say, they constitute about 46% of the unavailability. I mean, it's not all stations. I mean, Kendall is not old. Usile is not old. Duva is not that old. I think the 4th one is Cree. So you still find stations which should really be performing quite very well, underperforming. So the issues are much bigger than the issue of age.
That's true indeed. Thank you very much for your time this morning, just unpacking details of that Eskom briefing that we've just been listening to, and the reasons that they are citing for stage 6 power cuts, as well as a way forward. Energy Intensive Users Group CEO and energy expert Mr. Fanele Mondi joining us this morning.